I was depressed. I was in a funk. I was just getting separated from my wife, and things were looking bad and getting worse. She already spoke to lawyers and unpaid her consolation fee.
Or like,
I was just angry at the world, period. She started noticing a difference. She started noticing a change. I didn't mention nothing about it, but she did.
For the first time, we were able to have a conversation. I have a name for John now. I call him John 2.0.
After watching some of your YouTube videos, I said, well, maybe I should try this. So I tried it.
you just got to be coachable. Men, the admission for today's video is only one thing. Press that like button, but more importantly for you, press the subscribe button. Make sure after you hit the subscribe button that you do change those settings to all, and I don't want you to miss one single video that could actually help you save your marriage. John is joining me today, and he's going to share his experience as he's walked the journey through the DivorceStoppers program. The Bible says to be hopeful in all things. The goal of this video is to take some of the men that have given up hope because they've tried marriage counseling, leadership programs, the church counselor, they've went to counseling for PTSD and childhood trauma. They understand she's an avoidant personality and they're an attachment style personality, and all of the things that traditionally would cause people that are trying to save their marriage to work on the marriage. And as you know from what we teach on the inside, working on the marriage is exactly what doesn't work. That's why you've given up hope. So for that man that's given up hope, the goal of today's video is to sell him on enrolling himself in believing maybe if he continues on the path that he's on, that I was on, that you were on, that's why he's given up hope. But
Yes.
there is a different way and a reason to have hope, but you got to get off the hamster wheel to do that. Where were you whenever you first joined the Divorce Stoppers program, and how did you find us?
Okay. When I first started the program, well, when I found you, I was depressed. I was in a funk. I was just angry at the world, period, basically. And I happened to see one of your videos on YouTube,
Okay.
and I was just getting separated from my wife, and things were looking bad and getting worse. After watching some of your YouTube videos, I said, well, maybe I might try this. So I tried it, and it helped me get along to a point, but I didn't have enough to carry forward.
Okay.
So ironically, I started out good, and then I really tanked. I really messed up. So I joined the program, and got to see how I messed up, and it helped. What I really liked is that it helped me get out of my funk. It helped me to elevate myself internally. I didn't know which direction to go in. I didn't know what my next move needed to be, but all that changed once I started learning of what I needed to focus on. And that focus on myself being happy, for one. And number two, focus on the way I communicate with others. And that goes in line with the happiness. And those were the basic things that I needed at first. So by doing that, I could start learning the more advanced steps that were taken, which I seemed like I was lagging behind because she always seemed to be a little bit further than what I was in the program.
Okay.
But that wasn't a problem. That was just, something I just had to make sure I stayed on top of.
Okay. But yeah, being aware of that, honestly, just the fact that you saw that, that was radically different, because most men, I mean, I would venture to say anybody that's struggling in their marriage right now that's not one of my students, it's very likely one of the reasons that they're watching the video, if they're not a student, is because they just don't know what they don't know, and they're too
Yes.
close to their situation to see your situation. And the fact that you're acknowledging that you could even see she's 2 steps ahead of me at every turn, where would you have been if you hadn't have known how to actually see that, first of all, which helps you see her. You couldn't have seen that if you didn't have the eyes to see her in a different way. Explore that
True.
just a little bit.
True. I wouldn't have been able to see that if I didn't see her. And so, like I said, like modules 1 and 2 and going into 3, she was always still ahead of me. And so what I did, and I kind of cheated a little bit, I took a peek at the beginning of the next module to see what was going to be talked about. And I said, oh, that's where she's at. But I go back to my module. I wouldn't just watch the video. I go back to my module and rewatch those videos in the current module I was in, knowing what's coming ahead. So that way I could reinforce that now, and I didn't have to go back and forget something that I may have needed in my previous module. So I kind of, had to take my time to do that, but I kind of peek ahead, get like a preview of what's to come.
Right.
And then I go back and reinforce what I was learning in my current steps that I had. And that seemed to help me a lot once I got into 3 and going into 4. So
I absolutely love that. And what's so interesting, and I find it a little bit humorous about that is you're the first person that's ever admitted that to me, and nobody else has ever told me that. And what's interesting about that is the reason that we have it unlocked, so we don't limit it where you have to complete this one before you can move to the next one, is exactly for that reason. So you have the right to do that. We're all adults. We have brains, so we can think for ourselves. And the fact that you had the mindset and the leadership and I think, next level leadership in choosing to be resourceful enough to advance and take care of that on your own. So we actually get a lot of students that don't even sometimes think to do that. And so that's why we have the live coaching calls, so if you get stuck, so a lot of times we'll say, well, you need to go over here and then go back. And
yes,
you probably have heard me say that several times on some of the coaching calls. So let me ask you this. When you were looking on YouTube for marriage help, where was your marriage at? Where were you at emotionally, maybe even like a little bit physically? Where would you say your wife was? Share it as much as you want to about that.
okay.
And then in particular, where was the marriage and what had you guys together or individually try to take your life and your relationship where you want it to go?
Well, we were separated. She was living with her daughter. I just had no idea of what was coming next. And she was not wanting to be with me. She already spoke to lawyers and unpaid her consolation fee.
Or
And
like a
they were just waiting
divorce?
for the retainer. Yes, for divorce.
Okay.
And so when she came to pick up her stuff here at the house with the moving van, with the movers had come to pick up her stuff, I asked her if she would give me 30 days.
Yeah.
After she give me 30 days before we move forward with any divorce or anything, just give me the 30 days. And she thought about it and then she agreed. She said she'll give me 30 days. She said, but she asked why. I said, well, so we can have clear heads and we can cool down
Yeah.
and make a better decision. But she went ahead and gave me that 30 days. And that's when I started the program. Once I got through module 1 and with the communication, she started noticing a difference. She started noticing a change. I didn't mention nothing about it, but she did. And then by the time I got to 2, after I'd been in the program for maybe like 3 weeks, 4 weeks, she was really curious about, hey, what's going on? Something's not right.
I
You
love
know,
that phrase. I love that phrase. What's going on? What's different about you?
she wanted to know what's going on. She said, who are you talking to? What's going on? What are you doing? I gave her little tidbits of what I was doing as I was learning. She was wanting to
Yeah.
know what I was learning and what I was going through. So she was also learning. And one of the first thing I taught her about was confirmation bias and that she's got it. And we discussed it. And so she gave it a name. And
Oh,
so
I love that. It's a lot of firsts on this call. That's beautiful. How
so
did she
she
how did she respond to that? Because I don't know that I would have necessarily advised you to do that, but you probably were also psychologically reading the room. You had been through the
yeah,
communication training, so you probably knew how to land that
yes.
plane in the correct field, just like I say, so
Yes.
it came out a win. So how did she respond to that? Did she respond in a way that you landed a win in the relationship for both of you?
Yes, it was a big win. It was a very big win because she couldn't understand. She said I want to work things out, but I don't. She said something keeps telling me, and I said I know what it is. And she said, "What is that?" And
Confirmation
I told
bias.
her, it's confirmation bias, and you're gonna have to talk to her and explain to her what you want to do. So she took on to that idea, and it stuck. And so she gave it a name and said it's working overtime some days, and other days it's chilled out, and said didn't have to do any work.
Wow, I love that. And I think that shows that through your new leadership, it sounds like what you're describing, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it sounds like what you're describing is that your changes in your leadership caused her to actually level up and change in her leadership. And you
Yes.
had created through communication a place that she was willing to be in her safe place, to be vulnerable, to be open to almost get a coaching call from you where you're
Yeah.
explaining what you're dealing with. It's not you feeling like you're going crazy. It's an actual real thing that is biological, and
Yes.
it's been psychologically, the motor neurons have established neural pathways that we could biologically see on a brain scan. And so
Yeah.
it's a biological thing, but you can change it through what we now know is called neuroplasticity. And you might not have
Mhm.
used all those words to her, but if you guys are having a conversation about that, I'm sure you kind of like look. I'm sure she probably Googled it or something
Yeah.
and realized, wow, this is a very real thing. And if she's there with you, she's welcome to join the call as well. This would be
Yes.
worth
Yeah.
its way to go, but I'm not going to push anybody to do that. But that really takes a really high level of character, I think, particularly on your wife's part, and shows leadership next level also. Hello, I'm Denver.
Hi, Denver. Nice to meet you finally.
Likewise, whatever you'd like to share, we're very thankful for. So, what was your perspective as you saw John make the changes that we're teaching in the program with the intention that they're not manipulative, that the changes are meant to be here, real, and the goal is to make changes on the inside of his heart in a real way that will affect up here, which will come out differently here. Not because we're telling him what to say, but we're teaching him how to. The goal, just so you'll know, I don't know what you know, how much you know about the program, but the goal, day one, is to rewire the student's brain to see, hear, and value his wife. And so, share your experience if you saw that process unfold as he was one of the students going through the steps.
The first thing that I noticed about John was his demeanor. His own personality of how it was like night and day in such a fast pace. And that is what I noticed. And in the beginning, I was like, okay, he's just trying to, it's just words. He can fake this for a while, kind of a thing. But the difference that I saw is the emotional side of him that I had never seen before. The pride that he used to have, the ego that he used to have off the bat, I'm always right, and so forth. It was a very humbling experience to see how he transformed in a very short time. And even till today, I tell him the key thing that he told me is that I had already gone to, it got to a point that I wasn't even going to wait for him to file for divorce. I was going to do it. So I had already paid $300 for a consultation. And just as I was going, he had texted me and said, I know you're going to see a lawyer. Can we talk? And I went to the lawyer. I was already at the lawyer's office by then. I already talked. That lawyer already asked me, is there any reconciliation for this marriage? I said, no. Absolutely not. I'm moving forward. I'm not waiting for him. I can't do this. I'm afraid for my safety, for my daughter's safety, and the whole 9 yards. But the one thing that I kept telling myself is I did not want this divorce to begin with.
Right.
And, it was his idea that he brought up. But I told the lawyer at that time, once I got done after 2 hours of meeting with them, I said, I just need to think about this. I need to talk to my daughter and then, get back to you guys with the retainer. After I got done with them, I called John. And the one thing that John said, John at that time did not know I had already talked to the lawyer. He knew I was going that day. And he said, I just have one request. Just give me 30 days to get some clarity.
Okay. Let me ask you a question. I don't think I asked your name, and please forgive me that I didn't.
It's Annie.
Annie, okay. Well, it's officially nice to meet you, but go ahead. I'm loving this.
And that to me, he asked for that 30 days. And to me, we've been together for 10 years and married for 7. What is 30 days? So I did give it to him. And I remember the first time that I met up with him was at a park. And
We separated.
after we separated, I met him at the park. It's just emotional, even thinking about that, is that I saw a different person. He was not afraid to show emotion. He was very grateful that I met up with him. And it wasn't fake. I mean, you can tell I'm a professor and a dean. I have come across a lot of people in my life. I listened, and for the first time, we were able to have a conversation for the first time without interruption and being respectful of each other. That we actually caught ourselves. He caught himself saying, "I'm sorry. Go ahead. Say what you have to say. I'm listening." That's what he said. I am listening to you. I want to hear what you have to say. I want to know how you feel. Those were the words he used. And that was very new for me with him. And it was literally feeling like I was meeting a new person. I have a name for John now. I call him John 2.0, and we already killed John 1.0.
Well, that's our goal when we meet any new student. So when we met John for the first time, we had a goal that the old John would die
Yeah.
and that the scales would be removed from his eyes and that the ears would have the obstacles removed. So to position him to see, hear, to learn to value. And it's not common sense on how to do this because we're not really necessarily taught how to do that.
No, we don't. And that is the part, the empathy part. I teach my students that a lot. And when I was talking to John, some of the words that I used with him, the empathy, emotional intelligence, and so forth. And, he would say, well, Denver's talks about those words. So we suddenly connected for the first time. He's like, he was actually listening, and I became very interested to know who is Denver, what is he teaching, how is he teaching, and the whole 9 yard. So I wanted to know that. And for him to hear some of the things that I was saying, and you were saying some of the same things, that also got him very interested. It was like he was seeing me in as a new person as well. So I became very interested in the program, and I wanted to know how this was working, where he is. And I became very committed for him to finish it because I saw what it was doing. So I told him at that early on, I said, regardless of what is our outcome, I said, you need to finish this program because this is extremely important for your own personal growth. And I wanted to be part of that. And I said, whatever it is that we need to do to make that happen is very important.
Wow, that's so awesome that you encouraged him because of the changes that you saw that were attractive to you because they benefited the couple.
Yes,
And I think that you appreciated the fact that, it benefited him, but there was also a benefit to you,
absolutely.
which was a benefit to everybody that you guys have ever touched, every relationship you have. It's advantageous because it's a new level of leadership. What do you teach, Annie, if you don't mind if I ask that?
Business.
Business. And so isn't it amazing? So you'll find this very interesting. Every 3 years, we do a survey of our students. And so the last 3 surveys, we've asked a question after you've graduated. So the survey goes out for any student that's graduated within 18 to 24 months. And one of the questions we've always asked is, has your income changed, in your opinion, as a direct result of the marriage restoration program that we take you through? And the answer has always been a resounding yes. The last survey, we asked how much. We had, I think it was 71% of our students said within around 2 years after graduation, increase 100% or more. The reason I shared this with you is because you're telling me that you're in business. And so if we go back and we look at the data around why are we getting those answers? Because I talk a lot about finances in the program. And the reason that I do that is because we always want to fill our partner's emotional love tank. So they feel heard, valued, and seen as a partner and as a person. And I just think it makes the couple so powerful,
Yes.
even from a business perspective. Because when you learn how to truly see somebody else and hear somebody else, but at the same time see your own reflection in their eyes, so you'll understand what they're seeing in you, which coincidentally makes that person feel seen, maybe When I was going through this, I was the first student in the program myself. I was using the D word with my wife as well. I did not want a divorce, but I wanted a different marriage and I wasn't sure what to do. So I thought if I used that D word, it would prompt her to collaborate so we could make these changes. And at the time, we didn't know how to change them. You'll find this interesting. Even though we have lifetime access to the program, because people go at different paces, and I understand that, the program is designed on purpose to intentionally bring speed. Because when it gets to a place where one partner is talking to an attorney, speed is required because we're at the finish line of we've given up hope, which is the reason that we've consulted an attorney. And if we don't see something quickly to give us a reason to trust that there might be a different way, and in your case, you're like, okay, what's 30 days? What would have happened if those changes hadn't have been made in those 30 days? Where would you guys be today, even with good intentions? And so I like to say there's a need for speed. I went through several years ago, I was diagnosed with stage 4 throat cancer, and it was the biggest blessing in my life. And there's a reason I shared this because I'm making it about you. I had some really amazing doctors at Memorial Sloan Kettering. I moved up to New York for treatment. And I'm very interested in psychology. It's been like my life's passion since I think I was a kid. I think I was born with an interest in the human brain and the way that it works. This is something that you can tie into your business with your students because you might want to do more research on it and it might bore you. I don't know. But I'm going to share the story just in case it's beneficial. I met a team of doctors at the hospital that was doing a clinical trial for cancer patients who had had so much chemo that their white blood cell had been depleted. But this clinical trial was only bringing patients that had, prior to a cancer diagnosis, they were suffering from chronic pain and they were having to be on powerful narcotics for pain management. Well, when chemo wiped out their white blood cell count, they could no longer take medications for pain management. And so this clinical trial was teaching these patients how to manage their pain with their mind. And the way that they were doing that was to choose to feel differently by thinking different thoughts. And with enough time of thinking different thoughts, we could see the psychology changing. And after a completion of 7 weeks of choosing to intentionally think different thoughts when they felt pain, that we could literally see. Now, they didn't violate HIPAA in sharing the results with me. I didn't see anybody's personal PHI, but I was blessed with an opportunity to see the brain scans of these patients before and after, and we could see a biological change in the human brain where they were processing pain, and it was almost 100% of the patients that completed the clinical trial, they were successfully able to manage chronic pain with just their mind because they literally biologically rewired their brain through neuroplasticity. So why am I sharing this with you? That is the reason that so many of my students say their incomes increase drastically, because the way that we teach to restore the marriage, and I even like to say make money while you're sleeping, meaning your spouse feels differently about you and about how you feel about them once they feel seen and heard. And when you learn how to do that with your spouse on a new level of leadership, that organically comes out in your other relationships as well, if it's genuine and it's real.
Yes. First of all, I want to say good for you for beating cancer.
Thank you.
Secondly, I myself am a cancer survivor.
Good for you for beating it.
Thank you.
We're overcomers.
I know. I was diagnosed multiple times with different things and been very blessed that, caught it early enough where I did not have to go through chemo or radiation. So that's being said, it takes a lot of courage. It takes a lot of mindset. And my origin is Indian. My parents are from India. And with the Eastern culture, we believe a lot in the power of energy, mind, and also how, you can use the power of the energy of the universe to manifest what you want. It's all about mind over matter. So having that, background to me, I knew that in some way, shape, or form, that I believed in what John is and will be capable of doing. And I also have a business. I have a tutoring business. He's very keen to get involved and he wants to be part of it. He acknowledges, for the first time, he actually was interested to know what I was doing. And he was in awe of what my daughter and I have accomplished. She and I are the one who started that business. So now he's like, okay, what can I do? We need to make this powerful and helpful. And I told him, I said, I want you to finish your program first. And then once you finish that, then I'm going to put you to work. So it is absolutely amazing to me how the program that you have, how it progresses step by step. And I can understand the need for speed because the program that I teach in school, I teach an accelerated business program. The classes are only 4 weeks long. So I have to condense 4 months of class work into 4 weeks and teaching these students and these people how to be good leaders and how to embrace so many different aspects of business.
You literally have a need for speed, don't you?
Absolutely. Because number one is I don't have the time to make it fluff, but yet I have to make it fluff to be interesting. It's like two things that you're doing at the same time, getting straight to the point, being very real and letting them know what you're learning. It's not just about business or professional life. You take this with your personal life as well, because it goes hand in hand.
Circle.
Yes, it's a full circle.
Full circle.
Yes.
Yeah. You are such a blessing to your students because that paradigm shift and that way of thinking, for anybody that has you as a teacher, they are very blessed to have you as a teacher because that is not typical teaching in your industry.
No.
And I know you know that.
Yes, absolutely. And I know that I used to take that for granted. It's not till I start. My daughter is a high school math teacher. She's now working full-time in the business. When I was teaching her and explaining to her, and when some of my students come back to me years later and tell me what I do is when I realize, the way that I teach is very different. And so it is very personable. At the same time, I'm very real with them. When they come and tell me I couldn't do this work, because I had a sick child, or whether I had to work overtime, putting food on the table was more important to me than your class. I'm like, I get it. I get it. However, straighten that crown back on and get on with it. I understand that you have all these issues and problems. Deal with it. Let's deal with it. Give you some tools to deal with it, but focus on the goal. Why are you here? Why are you getting a degree? So that is the same approach that you took with John and this program. Why are you here?
I summarized that, and you can steal this from me if it's helpful to you, is being disciplined to complete the transformation process absolutely will not only determine the destiny in your marriage, but it'll actually determine the destiny and where you end up in your life. So I call that the 3 Ds. Your discipline to stay focused will determine your destiny, not just in this, but in everything that you do. And you're saying that same thing. So that's leadership.
Absolutely.
And it's teaching them leadership.
Yes. And I saw that you do that with this program. And I saw how effective it is. And the thing that made me a believer in it too, is that, and this is another way of teaching, I always tell my students that I don't want you to just learn these things. I want you to be able to apply what you learn.
1,000,000%.
And I saw that you do the same thing. You just don't give the tools, but you show them how to do it, what you need to do, and to be successful. And that is what teaching is all about. And I saw that is what you were doing with this program. And the one thing too, kudos to John, is that he embraced it. One thing I told John early on is I said, you have to fight for what you want. Don't wait for the change. Be the change.
1,000,000%. I love that. Love that. Love that. Let me ask you a question. So we've talked to You know, we've talked about leadership and the transformation that John has made. I'm very curious. Would you say that the changes that John has made, have those changes brought out any changes in you? A lot of you thinking, well, I've got to become the best version of myself if I want my marriage restored. I've got to go change. I've got to go do everything differently. All the stuff that she told me of the reasons she wants out of the marriage, I've got to go change those things. If you've already done all of that, but it hasn't worked, put that in the comments if that's you. Have you become the man that she said she's always wanted, but it's not enough? Maybe you were an alcoholic. Maybe you were a controlling narcissist. Maybe you were a psychopath. Maybe you were verbally abusive. Maybe you weren't intimate with her. Maybe you didn't value her opinion. But now all of a sudden, you do all of those things, but it still hasn't worked. Here's the question. Put in the comments if you have realized that that's not enough. You changing is a beautiful thing, and that's probably a requirement.
Yeah.
But it's not going to be enough to save the marriage if she has confirmation bias.
Yeah.
You've got to lead her to change. I'm very curious. Would you say that the changes that John has made, have those changes brought out any changes in you?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And that was actually an amazing factor in this. The changes in him brought out the best in me. The changes in him made seeing what he is doing brought back the old Annie.
I love it.
Brought back the old Annie's values, the old Annie, who she is. And I used to be, and I say the word used, I used to be this submissive, believe it or not. Although I'm a professor and a dean, people will never believe that I'm submissive. But when it came to my husband, came to my marriage, I always put the needs of my husband first. His happiness was important to me. Mine wasn't. So seeing this transformation with John, I began to put my happiness first. Now, people who listen to this will say, well, wouldn't that cause problems for you guys to be reunited?
That's what you saw me doing.
Yes. The thing of it is,
Opposite.
it was the opposite, because now we were both taking care of our own happiness. We set our own boundaries. One of the words that I say to John a lot now that he absolutely loves is that I'll say, let me be clear on what I want. Let me be clear in what I say. And I catch myself at the same time when I say something, I will say, you know what? Let me explain what I mean by that. And so, and he does the same thing. So now we are both communicating in a way that we don't make assumptions. And if there is an assumption, either one of us are not shy or even prideful to ask the other, what are you saying? What do you mean by that?
And that doesn't exist without a very, very safe place.
Absolutely. Go ahead.
And I want to say that getting rid of the 3 C's, that's the most critical things that I could have done. And not using any of the 3 C's has really turned a lot of things around. And also, like she said, my pride is just completely obliterated and gone.
Yeah.
Well, when you get rid of the 3 C's, like when you change that, so for anybody listening, if you've never heard the 3 C's, that stands for complaining, criticizing, or condemning. And typically, if we're ever tempted to practice the 3 C's, it's always a lack of leadership. And a lack of leadership leads to immaturity.
Yes.
And so if anytime we're even tempted with the emotion to complain, criticize, or condemn, it's almost always the fruit of the root that I have a request and I don't know how to act like an actual mature adult to position my words. And because we're not taught this. Well, I would say not everyone is taught this. I think there's a beautiful woman there on the right side of this on my screen that's actually teaching this level of leadership. So that's a very, very beautiful thing. So what do we replace the 3 C's? Anytime I have a feeling like I want to criticize, condemn, or complain, that's when I get to ask myself, this is simply because I have a request. And then processing that, is the request even worth asking? Like, it's just a habit of complaining, criticizing, or condemning when I have a request, But when I slow down, like I say in the program, if you really want to speed things up, you got to slow down to speed up.
Yes.
So it means I slow down, I process my emotions, and I process what is my actual request. And at that moment, I'm like, that's so childish. I don't really don't even care about that. So it positions you to do the opposite of the three C's, which is the positive, the
Right.
polite, and what marriage is supposed to be about, which Annie said, well, it brought back the old Annie. I would challenge that language to say, no, it brought back the young Andy.
Yes.
Because when you do the third P, it's positive, polite. And if you do positive, polite the correct way, it brings back the playfulness of
Yes.
your marriage.
It is.
Isn't that amazing?
It is. And the beautiful thing about this is that, as John is going through his transformation, I am also going through my own transformation as well. And what is interesting in this that John and I always laugh about, that we talk about, is that our families, they are especially with mine, having that cultural, divide. I have this Western versus Eastern culture going on with me, is that my family, being an Asian, Indian, we have a certain way of the dynamic that we have of how we think women should, be, and what men should be, and so forth. Of course,
Right.
that went out the door when I got all the highest degree possible. I broke that barrier. And then being a dean and being a professor, that broke the barrier. But now they are seeing a me who is not afraid to speak up, who puts her own happiness first. And, so even my family is like, okay, what is going on with her? We don't care about John right now, but what is going on with her, because we see changes in her. A classic example is that I can give is, my family was appalled when they saw that John was putting a picture of us when we went on a date on Facebook. And they were like, you were with them? I said, yeah. But why? And I said, they know that he's going through some program to turn things around. And I said, well, how am I supposed to know if he has changed if I'm not with him? If I'm not spending time with him, how am I supposed to know if things have changed? So in order for me to know how this transformation is panning out, I need to witness it. I need to see it. I need to live with it to actually see what is happening.
I was just going to say, I'm curious to see if you notice this. So there is a lot of marriage restoration programs out there. So statistically, women file the majority of divorces. And so what that faced with is the man oftentimes is using the D word, but the woman is usually the one that steps up in the leadership and goes and hires an attorney. That's just based on numbers. So I had somebody ask me, a very nice lady that was an author, that I was on a flight with her, I think it was 3 or 4, maybe 5 months ago, said, what do you do for a living? And I said, well, I help women and children have the life that they're supposed to have by teaching a different level of leadership with the man in their life that they don't want anything to do with. But this is what I would like to know your opinion of this. Almost every marriage restoration program that's out there that targets men, all of those programs teach from the perspective, well, the man needs to go get in the gym and go do all these things. And what ultimately, I was looking at the numbers literally this morning, 51% of my new students come from other programs. And the reason for that is because we don't do paid advertising. I wanted to know your opinion on this. So I get a lot of students that come from other programs, and the men, they get in the gym, they lose weight, they do all these different things to change themselves. And what happens is, instead of it making the marriage better, it makes the marriage worse. And here's the reason. All of those programs, I know for a fact, they're missing one thing, because I teach those things as well. What's radically different is those changes, if a man makes those changes, almost always, and in every scenario I've ever seen, 100% of the time, the wife that is wanting out of the marriage, she resents his changes. Instead of it, bringing them back together, it pushes them further apart, Well, why is that? When I look at the data around that, because I'm very data driven. If it can't be replicated, then we got to figure out what can. But here's the missing element. The first thing that we teach to bring speed in the program is communication. And we're not telling you what to say. It's what you said earlier. We're teaching you how to change your heart, change your eyes, your ears, so that what comes out here builds intimacy rapidly, which brings about connection. So, do those other changes need to be made as well? Do you need to get your life back on track as a man and all the other things? You know, is the gym helpful? Yes, they are. But you becoming the best version of yourself, if you don't know how to build intimacy, which the Latin derivative of that word is into me see, right? If I don't feel heard, if I don't feel like my wife sees me, I might be tempted to use the D word to get her to try to see the person that's here hurting, like that inner child, the childhood trauma. And then, you know what I'm saying? Then I'm focused, and I think that's the reason that my marriage can't be restored. I guess the question I was leading up to there, would you say that John really leveled up in his ability to see you through communication, which is what made these changes that you were seeing as he changed? Maybe is that what also led you to be encouraged and change? So what you're describing there with your family members is in the program I call enemies of the marriage. It don't mean they're bad people in World War III. It just means that they see that the relationship has caused you pain, and because they love you, they're putting the blame on John. Well, how do we get them to be okay with it? And more importantly, how do we get you to be okay having an uncomfortable conversation with your family members saying, I'm doing it. You know, I'm sorry you guys don't like it. Yes, he's hurt me. Yes, I haven't felt connected. But, you know, because a lot of women feel embarrassed to have that conversation, and it's an obstacle to restoration. Why were the changes that you saw in John so powerful at maybe bringing down the wall that you might have had emotionally up? The old John was using the D word, and for him emotionally, that was a sledgehammer that he thought might chip away at the wall you had up. The new John, we take the scales off his eyes, we remove the earplugs, and we change his heart. How did that bring down your wall to the point that you were telling your family members, bruh, chill, because I'm doing this?
Yes. You know, that is a very interesting question because, you know, like what you were saying, the other programs, they work on the physical attributes. And that physical attribute for a woman, of course, speaking from a standpoint of a woman, it's like, well, he's trying to look good for another person, for another woman, to attract another woman. And that is why there's a lot of resistance. But when you're looking at a relationship, it's not physical. It is definitely at an emotional level. For women especially, they need to have that emotional connection. So with John, the focus being at the way we communicate was huge. That was a huge problem. You know, the one thing that which you emphasize, because John and I talk about, is don't focus on the marriage, focus on the relationship. And that is extremely important because it's not the marriage that was broken, it is how we communicated. That was our main problem, the lack of. And I shut down as well because of that communication, that I felt, well, I'm not going to be heard. I'm not going to be seen. So why bother? I'm just going to listen, agree with whatever he says, and move on. And so seeing that change brought about the fact that he was really invested in this, because that is not a physical attribute. That was personality, that was mental. That is what I call taking the step to be the change, not waiting for me to change or pull something out of the hat to make it work. But he took the first step to say, I am going to take control of myself first. And that in turn helped me to follow suit.
But you train.
my dream.
She said, I needed you.
Yes, I had this dream because this was very early on, when he was going through this transformation, and I was getting involved, and I had this weird dream that I wouldn't say weird. I think it was really manifestation of both of us wanting what we wanted in our relationship. And in that dream, it was very straightforward. It's John appeared and he said, I need you in my life and you need to come back.
She told me about the dream, and she said that you need me, and you want me back right now. I said, well, I prefer that you're here, but I don't need you to be here, but I prefer that you're here, though. I mean,
Right?
Yeah. And it was very interesting because of the choices of words, need versus want, right? So he was telling me, and he said, I don't need you because my happiness is, my own, that I don't need you like I need air, but I want you. I prefer for you to be here. And that was really very strong because, we are manifesting what we are thinking and wanting. So we already saw a connection forming there already, as far as we were beginning to be, our vision, our goals of what we want were already aligning. And, going into that, John told me, before I go into the mission statement, I want to talk about the letter, the
The
intimacy
intimacy
letter.
letter.
Okay. In my mind, the intimacy letter was going to be, he's just going to regurgitate everything that he did wrong and then move on. That is what.
Yeah, and for anybody listening to this video right now, if you're in another program and that program has taught you to write an apology letter, I promise you from the bottom of my heart, that is not what I do in this program. And there is a reason that you're not even allowed to even look at that until we've worked with you in communication for 1 month. Because this has nothing to do with an apology.
No.
We use the bad stuff in the relationship to give both of you vision to build intimacy. That's why it's called an intimacy letter. So I apologize. I didn't want to interrupt, but
No.
I know I can see somebody watching this. They go, well, I was in a program. They told me to write an apology letter. All that did was confirm her reasons,
Yes.
reasons why she wanted a divorce.
And
That
that's
is not what we
exactly,
do here.
that's exactly what I thought. An apology letter. I'm sorry for
Yeah.
what I did. But this intimacy letter was at a whole different level. It invoked emotions that I didn't even realize was there because it was very deep. It was not just an apology. It was about acknowledgement. He really dove into what I was feeling, and he took that feeling and said, I cannot believe I did this to you.
And it took him a month to actually get that clarity in the program as he's learning how to communicate, how to see, hear, and value. It takes a month to get to that
Yes.
place where we can use the bad spiritually for good. That's actually something that's intended to be a spiritual experience.
It is. And what was amazing is I didn't feel angry. I wasn't angry. I was hurting, but the hurt that I felt was his hurt. I felt how remorseful he felt. I felt the pain that he felt for what I felt for all those years.
You were experiencing healing
Yes, absolutely.
and at the same time, connection.
Yes, very much so. What was also amazing about that is John told me it'll take you about 24 to 48 hours to process this. And he read it, he gave me, and he left. And I waited for a few because I was processing. And I called him after a few hours, and he told me later that he was even scared to answer that phone, not knowing if I was going to blast him or, say whatever. And I said, want to meet for dinner? I said, I don't need 24 hours to 48 hours to process this. I processed it. You have acknowledged. I know what you mean. It's like the healing, for me at least, happened just like that. that I'm like, okay, you know what? We acknowledge the past. Now that is the past. Now we have to look into a future.
I love that you're laying that out almost like in the framework of how we do it. It's reminding me of Valentine's Day cards. And what I mean by that is so many Valentine cards have the sayings in them about how much I need you. And while that sounds romantic and the TV series on television, the movies, I need you and all this, that sounds beautiful. But when we're in a long-term relationship or marriage, if we know that somebody else needs us, our subconscious starts relaying that with their actions of needing us. And what it basically is telling us is this person is not safe to be in a relationship, in a long-term marriage. They are not giving me permission to be an adult. I don't have the freedom to blossom as the flower that I'm created to be, whether it's man or woman, because this person is coming in to correct me. And them needing me in the beginning of the relationship, I thought I wanted that, but now that has become a pressure cooker that is putting the pressure on me where I literally feel responsible for their happiness, and I'm dealing with my own shit over here, and I can't take the weight of the world for both. And both persons in the relationship start experiencing that, and then we're too close to our situation to see. That's why one of the things I always encourage, and I would encourage you guys to implement this if you haven't already, is that anything that sucks the life out of fun and intimacy in your marriage, and stuff comes up and it has to be dealt with, and I understand that. But stuff that doesn't have to be dealt with. For example, if you have a family member and they're getting married and you have to book flights, or there's a birthday party, or maybe bills, or maybe you're going to make a purchase, or you're going to, just logistical stuff that's not necessarily stressful, but it's not building intimacy in the marriage. It's not fun. Those things have to be dealt with.
Yep.
And if you do what's normal, that is, it comes to my mind, oh, don't you know we need to schedule our flights, or don't you know we need to book our hotels, or, don't you need, this bill has to be paid, or we need to apply for that loan, or I have this event coming up. Can you make sure your calendar's clear for that? Whatever. Tabling that stuff that can wait for a weekly business meeting, instead of all of that sucking the life out of your marriage, it can actually be used to make both of you feel seen, heard, and valued, because you're saying we're allocating 1 hour a week or 1 hour and 30 minutes, whatever, where I am looking, I see you, I hear you. It's not fun to book the flights. Maybe sometimes to get the best deal, it might be really the opposite of fun. It's stressful. I'm saying book flights because I live in the Caribbean and I come to the U.S. a lot. And when my wife and I take our children, we have 6 children, 7 grandchildren, and we go on a lot of trips to build intimacy with our family, with experiences. It's like a nightmare to book flights. And so if we were to talk about that for 3 weeks, saying we need to do this, instead of tabling that for a weekly business meeting, it would, all of those things suck the life out of a marriage. And so tabling those things for a weekly business meeting that are not bad in themselves, instead of them contributing to something that can lead to a bad place, even a business meeting can build intimacy.
Yes.
One of the things, and Annie, I don't know if you're aware of this, but one of the things that I teach in the program is to have the marriage and the life that you're supposed to have. We want every student to have a goal to increase in their spiritual, their physical, their intellectual, their character, and their emotional attractiveness. And that business meeting helps both people do that.
Absolutely.
Because the old version of the relationship, maybe it never was a safe place to practically give criticism in a particular scenario with your spouse in a way that would have ever built intimacy, because that would have been received wrong. Once you increase in the spiritual, the physical, intellectual, character, emotional attractiveness, and you really are disciplined to table the business for a weekly business meeting, once you get to that level, the goal is always to get what I truly call soulmates. I think it's achievable.
Yes.
And once you get to the place that you actually know that I'm spiritually connected, for my wife and I, I don't really know your religious background. We're Christians. For us, the act of sexual passion is so spiritual and so
Mhm.
intimate that it's literally a form of worship to our Creator. But that didn't happen until we connected all these places before the sexual passion starts. So now the sexual passion is not just, in the bedroom, it's at the kitchen sink and it's at the
Yes.
car. And that grows, but you have to be disciplined in making sure that all the leeches that come to suck the fun out of your
Yes.
marriage,
Oh
you
my
say,
God.
hey, they're necessary, but we're going to table them so that they're not leeches. We'll use those leeches to put love in the love tank instead of sucking it all out.
In relation to that, when you were asking that question, how do you deal with enemies of the relationship? When my sister was telling me, she said, maybe you can forgive John, but I can't.
Yeah.
And I told her, I said, well, it's a good thing he's not your husband.
Yeah.
So women who have those issues where you have those people, what you have to understand is that this is about your happiness. This is about my happiness. This is where I have also learned to put me first. My happiness is my own doing. It's not someone else. I don't need validation from others of what I should and shouldn't do. And once I got that, then I was telling myself that, you know what? I have to do what makes me happy. I cannot do what makes others happy. And the thing that I was telling John too is, I don't know what other people would have said to other people about our relationship or why we are going through this. That is not my problem. That is their problem. If they need to save face or whatnot. So to me, as a woman, what I would say is that be true to who you are. This is about your relationship, and no one else should matter what they think or how to keep them happy. Because guess what? It's not your job to make them happy, but it is your job to make yourself happy. So do what you want to do.
I want to ask you a question around that. So, one of the things that I teach as a paradigm shift in the program is to position for the man as he's building intimacy that the new communication that comes out of his mouth that's coming from a paradigm shift in the way that he thinks, that the goal is to empower his partner to put her happiness first. Well, why is that? Because he is not responsible for her happiness. And this is a two-way street to show the student how to position it so that the opposite is also true. That while he's not responsible for her happiness, one of the reasons that we've got in this place, the fruit of a failed marriage, if we get to the root of that, it's because he has subconsciously positioned his wife to be responsible, or his partner to be responsible for his happiness, which oftentimes causes her to respond in the same manner. Would you say that the way that John come across in a very real way with his communication to build intimacy, making you feel seen, make you feel heard, make you feel valued, giving you the permission to be yourself without condemning, complaining, or criticizing, and at the risk, I don't really get a lot of women on these Zoom calls, but inside the program, the wording that I use is to give your partner the freedom to fail, fall, and fuck up, because we're all adults and everybody deserves that right, because that's how we grow as individuals. And when you have two individuals that are growing, that's a powerhouse couple when it gets to
Yes.
the soulmate status.
Yes.
Absolutely. And here also, there's another caution that I would put for women out there as the men are going through this transformation. Initially, she had the burden of making sure she was responsible for his happiness. Now, the one thing when you go through when the men are going through the transformation is that they are saying, well, I don't need you to make me happy. I have to find my own happiness. What I would caution women is that he's not saying that you're not important anymore. What he is just taking ownership of his own happiness. So it
Moving the
can,
pressure.
Yes, it's so it doesn't mean he's saying that I don't need you or I don't want you. It's just saying I am taking ownership and I'm empowering you to take ownership of your own happiness as well. Because I've had to stop at times myself and tell John, what do you mean you don't need me? So yeah, I took offense to that. I'm like, okay, for 10
Right.
years, I have had this response.
Society has conditioned us to take offense to that.
Yes. And I tell you what, my confirmation buyers became so alert at that time, saying that, oh, look, he is trying to put you down again, saying he doesn't need you, da 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 da. But I had to tell her to shut up. But like John said, I have different names for her, which may not be appropriate. But the only thing I told my
Share one.
the only thing I told my confirmation bias is this: you exist because of me. So shut up and listen to what I have to say because you have this bias because of me. So I have every right to take it away from you because I'm the one who put there in the first place. So it is important to also understand when the man is going through the transformation, it is so important for the women to know as well, understand what the program is trying to accomplish. I would ask the women to be involved in what the program is trying to accomplish. What are the goals?
Some of them will. Some of them won't.
And that is very true because some of them, they might need more help than that. They might need that, that coaching and transformation for themselves.
Well, I'll tell you one of the things is we get a lot of students. So all of the students that come into the program, even on my YouTube channel, my viewership is 99.6% men because it's a men's leadership program. I'm teaching it from the perspective of how do we help the women and the children. We do it by using the man to change the leadership because his failure in leadership, just out of ignorance, not with a bad heart, not with bad intentions. Because if I had somebody with a bad heart or bad intentions, we scream for that. So we don't bring bad hearted people on as students. But if you're good hearted and it's just out of ignorance, ignorance is not a bad thing. Ignorance is just ignorance. We don't know what we don't know until we find somebody to teach us what we do know. We'll never know it. And so one of the things that I hear a lot of times is you just don't know my wife. Like she doesn't trust me anymore. She's out. There's the enemies of the marriage. And this is what I tell every new student. And then we teach how do we actually implement practical steps with the framework. It's not up to your wife if she trusts you. Right now, if your wife doesn't feel safe with you, that's simply she doesn't trust you. One of the things that's interesting about the human mind is if as a man, my brain actually does operate biologically different than a woman's brain. And particularly around the emotion of fear, if a man has a shark chasing him in the ocean, he'll process that here. But if a man has an emotional fear, even as a young boy, he will literally process it on the opposite side of the brain. The female brain processes the emotion of fear here. And if a shark is after her in the ocean, she literally processes the physical fear in the exact same place. So why is that important to know as you're trying to build intimacy and restore a relationship? It is the reason earlier when you were saying you were actually experiencing the emotion of feeling physical fear, it's because your relationship completely was lacking in emotional safety simply because of communication.
Absolutely.
And it's such an easy thing to fix. So let me ask the two of you this. What would you each, if you don't mind sharing this, what would each of you independently say to a man that might be watching this video, or maybe even the wife, but since the audience is 99, almost 100% men, what would you say to that man that is watching this, that the wife has already spoke to an attorney and she is maybe even having an emotional affair with another man, which is normal because the man became the pressure cooker. He was putting the pressure on. And when you put pressure, emotional pressure, it always finds an outlet to let off steam. Sometimes that's with an emotional affair partner. Sometimes that's with an enemy of the marriage. It could be a woman that's not sexually, but an emotional affair partner. Sometimes it could be sexually affair partner. But it's always, this is one of the things I say in the program. This is true, but we change it in the program. But for all of my new students, it's true. Men need a place to have sex. women need a reason. We change that for our students, but that's the way that it starts out because it's the brain and it's the way that we're taught since birth. TV teaches that, but we change that in the program. What would you guys individually, as a couple and collectively and then separately, what would you say to somebody that is in a place where their wife may not be going to the best emotional outcome for herself and the children in a divorce, but she's given up hope? She has told him, I want a divorce. We are not saving this relationship. She has given up hope. There are enemies of the marriage. Her family hates him because she's been hurt by him. And he just thinks that there is no coming back from that. Now he's sitting over here having thoughts of checking out because he doesn't know what to do, because he feels like a failure, because he's failed out of ignorance. But she's out. The divorce is not finalized, and in some cases it is finalized, but the wife is not remarried yet. If we look at the data around divorce, most of the time it's not in the best interest culturally, emotionally, financially, or spiritually for either partner. And we know that in a second marriage, a second or a third relationship, that the statistics of that being successful, the numbers just plummet. And so a lot of times people just say, well, I just give up because I've never been shown a reason to have hope. If my partner wants out, it is not normal. What you guys have experienced is less than 1% of 1%. Going to that place where you were, it is not even 1% of 1% people that reach that destination or worse are able to come back and have something better than it maybe ever was before. It is not normal because nobody is teaching it from the perspective of the way that we're teaching it, that yes, how do you position so you're responsible for your own happiness? How do you empower your partner and encourage them to blossom and thrive as an individual within the collective relationship? How do you empower them to do that with no fear that they're going to leave you, to empower and help them spiritually, physically, intellectually, character, and emotionally be responsible for their own happiness, which is what makes a couple. It opens up the door to understand what it means to become soulmate. But right now, the man that's watching this video, he is hopeless. She is checked out. She's talked to the attorney, the enemies of the marriage, his friends, his coworkers, his colleagues, his mama, his own children are saying, give up on this. If you really truly love her, let her go. What would you say to that man that has no hope? Men, if your marriage is in a place where John and Annie's marriage was, where you are facing a divorce, it does not matter if she has a boyfriend. It does not matter if she has avoidant personality or attachment personality. It does not matter if you or her have childhood traumas that you're working through. It does not matter if there is an affair partner, whether that's emotional, physical, or sexual. If confirmation bias exists like it did in John and Annie's marriage, there's a way that you can take the first step today by joining my free Marriage U-Turn Masterclass, where I'm going to take you on the first step in dissolving your problem, which is confirmation bias. Confirmation bias is psychological, and with enough time, it becomes biological. But the good news is all of that can be reversed if you know how to do it. I'm going to help you do this in my free Marriage U-Turn Masterclass. My video editor is putting the QR code on the screen right now. You can scan that or visit my website to register for my free live Marriage U-Turn Masterclass at denvergriffin.com/masterclass. Visit that today to take the first step of changing your life. You have a need for speed. Put time on your side because time is probably running out. What would you say to that man that has no hope?
First thing I would
And
say.
everybody's telling him, check out, bro.
Exactly. First thing I would tell him is don't talk to anyone else. First and foremost, don't talk to anyone else about the relationship and start step one. Focus on the first module, and make sure you know it by heart. If you follow it to the letter, you'll be ready for the next steps that are to come. But be patient with yourself and make sure that you follow step one and the whole first module. Make sure you follow it to the letter. I mean, if they tell you to wear green socks that day, you put on green socks. I mean, that's exactly what you need to do because you can't skip step one and try to go into the later steps because you don't have tools you need. You don't have the things.
Because it's communication. It's the most important. You won't do the rest of it correctly
Exactly.
without
You
that.
can't. And then step 2 builds onto that and it gets into more advanced concepts as far as where you find your happiness and other things that you're going to encounter that you're going to need and get into your intimacy letter. So you can't get to the intimacy letter and all that until you get the first module taken care of. Start it as soon as you can. If you're that far in towards divorce, start it as soon as possible. So that way you can get yourself ready for what's to come. Because the winds will start. I mean, they will start. I was skeptical a little bit, but I had already seen from the YouTube videos that, oh yeah, this works. So I know there's more. So as I'm going into the program, it was enjoyable. I mean, I had fun going through the punch. I mean, I had a lot of fun, even though, I'm working on something very serious, but it wasn't tedious. It was fun.
Yeah, this is one of the things I say. Everybody wants this to be hard. Everybody wants this to be hard because we're conditioned. Anything worth fighting for, you got it. No pain, no gain. And I think in most areas of life, that's true. But in relationship, bonding, and intimacy, it is literally the opposite of true.
That's true.
The one thing, the approach that I would take is this. I would take an approach. Let me tell you about the approach for a man and the approach for a woman. For a man, I would say, you know what? Okay, you are at your wit's end, right? You feel like you are a total failure, that you cannot get anything right, and so forth. You need to trust the process. Trust the process. Trust the program. Trust in yourself. I know right now you might feel like you have nothing, but the truth of the fact is, the fact that you are watching this means that you have not given up, truly. Okay? You still have that sliver. You're trying, you're asking for help, and the help is here right now. And as the wife who was telling the lawyer, I am ready, there's no reconciliation, I just need to go home and figure out which card I'm going to use to put the retainer. That is, I am here to tell you, be honest with yourself. Before you can work on that relationship, you need to work on you first. So don't think about the relationship yet. That's where the first part of the module comes in, the communication. Know your worth and understand that you are worth it, because at one time she loved you very dearly. There was something about you that attracted her to you. You need to bring that person out. So it's there. You do have what it takes. Just learn how to bring it out. So trust the process, trust the program.
Even in the worst of circumstances, when a wife wants a divorce, do you feel like we have what it takes to very quickly start the process of changing her mind, even though in her mind she's done?
Absolutely, because it worked on me. Listen, I'm an Indian. I am South Indian. And for those of you who know anything about India, I'm a Kerala girl. We are very, very stubborn, hard-headed, and highly educated. And we'll throw all those things to your face to give you. And then you throw the fact that I'm also a professor and a dean on that. It's like you cannot get over. Okay. And I am telling you right now, if you are genuine, if you truly care about yourself as a man, and you care about her, and all you have to do is say, give yourself 30 days to clear my mind and get clarity, because this is important. And also, one of the things that John also told me is that he said, no matter what way we go, the least I want out of this is that we are still cordial, we are friends, and we are there to support each other, and I can help you in any way I can. That's what I want to learn. That phrase is huge for a woman, for anybody
100%.
for that matter.
Because it tells you that he's safe. And I'll tell you something else. A lot of people watching this part of the video, they're going to say, she's going to say no in the 30 days. It doesn't matter. 99% of the women say no on the 30 days.
Yeah, they would.
And
They would.
you can still do it even if she says no. You can still do
Oh
it.
yeah.
If you're a man that you're watching this and she wants out, you can well, I mean, John, you're on the inside. You see the other students.
Yeah.
All of the wife, pretty much the wife says no
Yeah.
on the 30 days.
Yeah.
No on the 1 week. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
If you start incorporating it, it will all not only does it change the student, but it immediately changes her mind as well.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's like when I say, if I owned a gas station and I hire a cashier to run the cash register, I could say I'm choosing to trust them, but in reality, I don't trust them. And the only thing that's going to cause me to actually trust them is them, their actions, not me. I can't choose if I trust somebody. What builds trust? Repetitive relationship histories,
That's it.
new
Yeah.
forward relationship histories of trustworthy behavior. So when would I truly trust my cashier? When we do our first inventory
Yes.
and see was any money stolen from the cash. So if your wife is somebody that says, no, I'm not going to give you 30 days, you don't need her permission to start changing
No.
yourself.
Not at all.
And the way that we teach you to change as a man will, if you have any communication with your wife at all, and it does not matter if it's only about bills or logistics or the children or stuff that has nothing to do with the relationship, we can use all of that to restore the relationship because it's in here.
Yes.
And we teach you how to make that come out with practical steps and a framework so that it changes here,
Yes.
and it comes out here. And it's just, I think, beautiful.
And the thing of it is too, even if she says no to the 30 days, your actions are going to speak louder than your words. Because at that point, if it's in a really bad situation where she doesn't even want to give you a second of her time, whatever you say is not going to matter to her, but what you show and what you do will. So if nothing comes out of it, you are going to be a better person as a man.
You can show it better. You can tell it.
And it will make a difference and she will see it. And when she sees it and senses just the very subtle thing, it's not the big things that she will notice. It's the very subtle things that used to annoy her or cause her pain or whatnot. It's like what I was telling John. It's not that one thing that did it for me. No, it's a combination of very small things. So it's those small things that you make changes is what is going to build up to a bigger thing. So no, it's not a monumental, difficult thing to do. Because the way that I tell my students too, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time.
Absolutely love that you acknowledge that. We have a lot of people that watch this YouTube channel that send emails all the time and say, thank you so much. My marriage was in a bad place. And just from watching your channels, we've turned things around. In those examples, though, there wasn't a strong activated confirmation bias. And so it was just both people that were in a pivot, they were in a funk, they didn't know what to do. And the YouTube channel gave them the information needed together to change. When somebody has confirmation bias, it's always the case that both people have it. One person has it stronger. The man doesn't see that he has it typically. So we bring that out and show that to him. But I love that you literally just described that if confirmation bias exists, I cannot restore someone's marriage or get their life back on track from YouTube. Here's why. Because YouTube is information. And while that's beautiful and helpful to so many people, if confirmation bias has been activated and it exists, you have to have transformation and not just in one area. You have to have transformation in communication, transformation in intimacy, transformation in how do you deal if there's childhood traumas? How do you deal if one of the partners has PTSD? How do you take projected confirmation bias from a father figure, past relationship histories? How do you have transformation with enemies of the marriage? How do you have transformation with sexual passion or past sexual abuse? And we literally have a path to do all of that. It's just called the framework. And I believe no matter what area, I'm a huge advocate, any area of my life that I want to go next level, there is somebody out there that has a proven framework that can walk me through a step-by-step transformation to change in that area of my life. No excuses. Even though excuses might be true, they might be valid. what are they costing me by holding on to them? Because there's always a different path. And that's just what we do here. We'll give you a different path of the proven framework to not just change your relationship, but I actually would go so far as to say to change your life.
It does.
It does.
It really does. It changes interactions with everybody.
It changes your perspective.
It changes work. It
It-
changes everything.
It's every aspect of your life. It is just not one thing. I was telling John, I said, I'm going to be such an advocate for this program because I see how much it works. And I, having gone through for the 10 years with John and seeing the challenges and obstacles he has had, I knew that I couldn't help him. It came to a point that I told myself, the reason I was ready for the divorce is because I knew I couldn't help. And now let me also be clear, that is not to say that I was perfect either. Hello? Because I know John was telling me I cannot keep up your perfection. And I said, oh, trust me, I have my own nuances as well. So it is not here to say that the wife is 100% right and the husband is 100% wrong. No, it takes two to tango. And no one can tell me that anyone is perfect because that's not possible. If you are perfect, then you should be walking on water.
But I'd like to say something in support of the program. Guys going through the program, they don't need to think like that. Starting new in the program, they don't need to think like that because you need to have the positive thoughts, the positivity. For me, to get rid of any negative thought. Yes, she's perfect. I have no complaints about anything that she does or wants to do. And by doing that and having a difference, saying, hey, look, if we have the marriage, it's fine. I prefer we do. If we don't, then okay, I'm fine with that too. I'm still going to be happy. But I'm not going to look at any negative thoughts and say, well, if she only did this, then I would be happier about getting back into this relationship. No, we don't do that. We're going to stick with, hey, we're going to have a positive thought. If she doesn't want to get with it, okay, it's fine. But I'm happy. I'm going to smile. I'm going to put a smile on my face and say, let's keep it moving.
Your comment is absolutely 100%. You're speaking the truth. And Connie, I would tell you earlier on your comment, I see you. Okay. I'm like an Avatar movie. I see you. But John, with what you're talking about, those words, while true, they're also scaring people to hear them. And so the reason I want to bring this up is this. I know that those words would scare people hearing this if they're not a student. But one of the things that we make sure to empower you to take those steps to have that paradigm shift is the Iron Sharpens Iron group.
Yes.
And so can you tell me, did that group help you have that paradigm shift up here so that way of thinking was real, which is required to build intimacy and emotional safety? What was your experience of that group and how was that encouraging for you?
Tremendously helps. And I'll say this, because you get to see examples of what someone else, you're not the only person that's going through this. That really helps because when you're going through these things, you feel isolated and you feel like you're the only person that this is happening to, but it's not even the case. You see other people that are going through the same things that you're going through. And sometimes even they're going through a little bit more of a challenge. And it really helps to see that and get the encouragement from your fellow brothers. You also get encouragement when you do have good wins, when you do make good, nice games.
The reason I bring this up is there's a lot of people right now that are going to be watching this video. They're in another program. And I hear this a lot. In those other programs, the students can see each other, but they would characterize the pull of the support group as losers helping losers feel good about losing. And I don't mean that from a demeaning standpoint of like, look at those losers. I mean it from the perspective of everybody's patting each other on the back to make them feel better because their marriages are not being restored. Does that make sense? How would you describe this Iron Sharpens Iron group as different if there's a person that's experiencing that's watching this, since you've had access to and still do to the inside?
Because you can see actual gains being made. You can see when people are just reestablishing communication, and you see them having dinner with their spouse, and you see a progression. You see a progression working more towards that goal. It's not just patting each other on the back. I don't feel that way. It's more of sharing and watching each other grow. We're seeing each other grow.
So when I say patting on the back in the other groups, from what I hear on a weekly basis, it's everybody's posting where they're failing and this didn't work and I'm discouraged today. Can you guys help me feel better? I'm depressed because I see my marriage is literally coming to an end. Like it's not getting better. So can you describe, is there a difference in the group that we put you in for support?
Yes, we could, because we're not looking for pity amongst each other. We, that's one of the main things. We're not looking for pity. I'm not asking my brother for pity because, oh, this is failing and this is not working. No, we ask a question and somebody will give up an answer. I know Michael, he's helped me a lot because he's further along than I was. But he's helped me a lot. And we would chat back and forth, whatnot. And I get to see his journey and how much he's progressed, which, I'm going to congratulate him. It's important on that. And plus, it reinforces me to see what did he do. And I'll call out and say, hey, that was good. You used this, this, and this in your leadership when you did this. So that I understand how the process is working more because I'm watching the mechanics in play.
Yeah, the purpose of that group was to train the subconscious that you don't need to trust the program, that if you see the results of all of the other students, that should empower you to know that you can have the same results.
Yes.
Was that accomplished for you?
Yes, that was accomplished for me.
The one thing that I would say is, well, I'm a Catholic. We are Christians as well. But one thing I would say is, for people who are watching and listening this, you have heard a lot of positive things, but that doesn't mean that we did not have hurdles that we overcame as well. And you just have to stay strong. You have to believe in what both of you are doing and wanting. And if you have that belief, it boils down to the communication that is being taught in this program. No matter what comes your way, those hurdles, those obstacles, if you can talk it out and figure it out, it will work and your relationship will be restored. And it's not just during the duration of the program, it is a lifetime commitment that we make to each other, that we have made, and listening to each other. And I'm grateful, extremely grateful to the program and for John to stumble into you, Denver. I am very appreciative of what your program has done and what you are doing. I would encourage highly for people to do it. Be true to yourself. Don't give up, because having courage doesn't mean fearless, not having fear. Having courage means that you have fear, but you have the courage to move forward. Courage does not mean fearless. If you don't have fear with courage, that means you're doing something wrong.
Men, if your marriage is in a place where John and Annie's marriage was, where you are facing a divorce, it does not matter if she has a boyfriend. It does not matter if she has avoidant personality or attachment personality. It does not matter if you or her have childhood traumas that you're working through. It does not matter if there's an affair partner, whether that's emotional, physical, or sexual. If confirmation bias exists like it did in John and Annie's marriage, there's a way that you can take the first step today by joining my free Marriage U-Turn Masterclass, where I'm going to take you on the first step in dissolving your problem, which is confirmation bias. Confirmation bias is psychological, and with enough time, it becomes biological. But the good news is all of that can be reversed if you know how to do it. I'm going to help you do this in my free Marriage U-Turn Masterclass. My video editor is putting the QR code on the screen right now. You can scan that or visit my website to register for my free live Marriage U-Turn Masterclass at denvergriffin.com/masterclass. Visit that today to take the first step of changing your life. You have a need for speed. Put time on your side, because time is probably running out.